The vestibular system is responsible for one's sense of motion, head position, and spatial orientation relative to gravity. The part of the vestibular system pictured here is the peripheral vestibular system, which is in the inner ear. The peripheral vestibular system is a network of membranous sacs housed in a bony labyrinth. It contains 2 otolithic organs and 3 semicircular canals. The 3 semicircular canals are the superior or the anterior, the horizontal or the lateral, and the posterior or the inferior. The semicircular canals detect angular motion and sit orthogonal or at a right angle to each other. They are filled with a fluid called endolymph, and each semicircular canal responds to motion in a different plane. There are 3 different head movements that the semicircular canals detect. The first is ya, which is like shaking your head no, which is seen here. This is looking at the top of someone's head, and that little diamondy thing is his nose. And the horizontal semicircular canal detects motion on the yaw plane. The next 2 head movements are pitch and roll. Pitch is like shaking your head yes, and roll is like moving your head from shoulder to shoulder. Both the anterior semicircular canal and posterior semicircular canal detect motion on these planes. Each semicircular canal has a coplanar pair on the opposite side that detects movements in the same plane. So the horizontal semicircular canals on either side are pairs. And to remember which anterior and posterior canals are pairs, you can use the acronyms RALP and LARP. So that means right anterior to left posterior, and left anterior is pairs with right posterior. Now that we know which canals sense motion on the same planes, let's look at how the semicircular canals actually sense head tilt. Each semicircular canal has an enlarged end called an ampulla, and that can be seen right here. All right. And the ampulla houses the sensory epithelium, which is the crista ampullaris. Now let's take a look inside the ampulla. The crista ampullaris is covered by a gelatinous mass called the cupula. That's the yellow. And the cupula goes from the floor of the ampulla to the top of the ampulla. Embedded in the cupula are the vestibular hair cells. There are 2 types of vestibular hair cells. Type 1 hair cells are flask-shaped and are surrounded by a large calyx at the base. In the semicircular canal, the type 1 hair cells are centered on the top of the crista ampullaris. Type 2 hair cells are cylinder-shaped and have multiple nerve terminals connecting to the base. Type 2 hair cells are focused around the sides of the crista ampullaris, and both hair cells have stereocilia that is embedded in the cupula. This stereocilia gets progressively taller, and the tallest stereocilia is called the kinocilia. So this is seen as the bolded one on the right side of the screen. When angular motion takes place, the endolymph inside the semicircular canal moves and displaces the cupula. Displacement of the cupula causes deflection of the stereocilia, which causes either an increase or decrease in the firing rate of the afferent fibers connected to the hair cells. If the displacement of the cupula causes the stereocilia to move toward the kinocilia, this results in excitation. If the stereocilia move away from the kinocilia, then this results in inhibition of the nerve. Let's draw out an example. So here I have a semicircular canal. Let's say this is my right horizontal semicircular canal. And if I turn my head to the right, it'll cause the endolymph inside to move in this general direction. So this movement of the endolymph will cause a displacement of the cupula this way, which then will cause a displacement of the hair cells in this direction. So here's my kinocilia, and then here are my stereocilia. So since my stereocilia are moving towards my kinocilia, a right head turn will cause excitation in the right horizontal semicircular canal. Now what happens to my same right horizontal semicircular canal when I do a left head turn? This time the endolymph is going to move in the opposite direction. And this is going to cause my cupula to be displaced. And this time my stereocilia are going to move away from my kinocilia. So a left head turn of the right will cause inhibition in the right horizontal semicircular canal. So now that we have talked about the semicircular canal, let's talk about the otolithic organs. There are two otolithic organs, or as they're also called, the macular organs, and they are the utricle and the saccule. Their sensory epithelium is called the macula, and the otolithic organs respond to linear acceleration. The macula have sensory hair cells that project into a gelatinous matrix also called the otolithic membrane, seen here, and embedded in the matrix are otoconia, which are calcium carbonate crystals. These crystals provide the utricle and saccule with inertial mass. Since the otoconia are heavier than the surrounding endolymph, they have a higher specific gravity, so a shift or a tilt of the head displaces them and they align with Earth's gravity. The utricle is oriented on the horizontal plane, and the saccule is oriented on the vertical plane. Each macula has an anatomical line through it called the striola, which divides the organ into two parts. The utricle and saccule have the same type 1 and type 2 vestibular hair cells as the semicircular canals. Type 1 hair cells are found near the striola and on both the utricle and the saccule, and type 2 hair cells are found on the lateral ends of the otolithic organs. In the utricle, the kinocilia are oriented toward the striola, so that's what these arrows here are showing. And in the saccule, the kinocilia are oriented away from the striola. So that's what these arrows are showing. This organization allows the organs to sense linear motion in nearly any direction. Just like the semicircular canal, motion towards the kinocilia causes excitation, and motion away from the kinocilia causes inhibition. Since the striola is in a straight line, each macular organ can be excited or inhibited at the same time. If one saccule is diseased and not functioning, the intact saccule on the other side has both excitatory and inhibitory signals that can send signals to the central vestibular system so that it can adjust posture and eye movements accordingly. So now that we've covered the anatomy of all the end organs, let's go over how signals get from the peripheral vestibular system to the brain. Nerve fibers from the ampulla of the semicircular canals and the macula of the macular organs join together to form the vestibular nerve ganglion, or Scarpa's ganglion, shown here. The vestibular nerve then goes through the internal acoustic meatus, shown right here, which is also called the internal acoustic canal, and enters the brainstem at the pontomedullary junction. Here, the vestibular nerve will bifurcate into a superior and an inferior portion. The superior vestibular nerve contains the horizontal semicircular canal, the anterior semicircular canal, the utricle, a small portion of the saccule, and possibly the posterior semicircular canal. And the inferior vestibular nerve portion contains the posterior semicircular canal and the saccule. The vestibular nerve then makes synapses to the vestibular nucleus complex, shown here, and the complex is made up of 4 nuclei: the superior, the lateral, the inferior, and the medial. Nerve fibers that make synapses to the superior nuclei come from the anterior semicircular canal, the horizontal semicircular canal, and the utricle. Nerve fibers that make synapses to the medial nuclei come from all 5 end organs. Nerve fibers that make synapses to the inferior semicircular or inferior nuclei are the saccule and the posterior semicircular canal. And nerve fibers that make synapses to the lateral nuclei come from the saccule and the posterior semicircular canal as well. So the last thing I'm going to talk about in my video today is the vestibular ocular reflex, or VOR. VORs are prompted by angularly or linearly accelerated displacements of the head. The VOR stabilizes images on the retina during head movement, and the eyes move, causing the eyes to move in the opposite direction of the head turn. In this video, I'll be going over the horizontal semicircular canal vestibular ocular reflex. The horizontal semicircular canal, VOR, is made up of 3 reflex arches. This example is going to be of a right head turn causing excitation of the right horizontal semicircular canal, which we demonstrated earlier. So the first reflex arch is going to start at the horizontal semicircular canal, it will then go to the medial vestibular nucleus, and then the contralateral abducens nucleus. Then that will go to the contralateral lateral rectus, and this results in an eye movement opposite the direction of the head, which the lateral rectus will abduct the eyes. The second reflex arch is going to start at the horizontal semicircular canal again, then go to the superior vestibular nucleus, then to the ipsilateral ocular motor nucleus, and then it will contract the medial rectus, and which will result in an adduction of the eye. And the last reflex arc of the horizontal semicircular canal, VOR, is going to start with the contralateral abducens nucleus, and that's going to cross over to the ipsilateral ocular motor nucleus, and then that is going to contract the ipsilateral medial rectus, which will again cause an adduction of the eye. And so this is when the right horizontal semicircular canal is excited, is the green path. So when the right horizontal semicircular canal is excited, the left pathway is going to be inhibited. So the left pathway is shown in yellow, and that's the inhibition path of the VOR.